Welcome back. Let's start off by adjusting a couple of settings and getting the software ready for animating, and then we'll import our audio. So the first thing I really want to do is double check that I've got my frame rate set. So I'm going to come down here to my preferences button, okay, and what we'll do is just double check this value here, max playback speed. We've got real time 24 frames per second. What I want to do is set that to 25 frames per second. So I'm going to come up to the settings section here in the list, and I'm going to set my time code to PAL 25 frames a second rather than it being film. And what we'll do is hit save. Okay, now you'll see here at the beginning of the timeline, it now is set to 1.04. Okay, what I want to do is just change this number back to 1, like that. Now you'll see up here that this still stays the same. What you can do is just drag the timeline indicator sort of up the timeline a little bit and then take it back down to 1. The next setting that we want to change is the playback speed for the viewport. And what we want to do there is set it to real time. So I'm going to right click here on the play button. Now this will probably disappear off the bottom of the screen, yes. What you'll need to do is go down to the playback speed option in this menu and set it to either real time or play every frame max real time. So you can use the first option or the last option in the playback speed setting. Okay, do not leave it set to play every frame free. If you do that, the animation will either play back very slowly on a sort of a low-end computer or really fast on a high-end computer. It's based on your actual processor and amount of RAM and so on, that middle option. So you can set it to either the first option or the second option. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is import our audio. And just to take a quick look at what we need to do with the audio, I've got my project folder here open. Okay, so there's the project folder. And what I've done is I've copied my audio into this sound folder just here. So I've got one audio track from a TV show, Firefly in this case. Okay, and then I've also got this other little audio clip just here. So I'll just play both of those so that you can kind of hear them, and hopefully the audio is not too loud.
6 men came to kill me one time. And the best of them carried this. It's a Callahan full-bore auto-lock. Customized trigger, double cartridge thorough gauge. It is my very favorite gun.
Okay, so that's the first one. And then this is sort of a little sample.
Yeah, I'll have one of those pink cupcakes, thanks.
Okay, so I've got a couple of different audio files I could use there. So you just need to get an audio clip that's something along those lines. Just you know, 1 or 2 sentences would be absolutely fine for this. Okay, now once again they need to be WAV or wave files. Okay, so you can see there the item type is a wave sound. You can, if you've got something like an MP3, you can convert it using Audacity, and you'll find Audacity, I think, on pretty much all of the Macintosh computers at school. But I do believe it's a free download that you can get online. You can just download it on your computer at home if you're working on this at home, and you can load your audio into it. Just open your audio file and then just export it back out or save it out as a different format. So you'll want a wave format for this. Okay, so let's get rid of that folder and let's load the audio in. So what we want to do is come up to File and we want to select Import. Now this is going to take us into our scenes folder, because by default it wants to import a 3D object. Okay, what we're going to do is go back one folder, okay, and we're going to go into the sound folder just here, and we want to select the audio file that we're going to use. So I'm going to load in this Firefly clip just here, and what we'll do is hit open. Now generally speaking, what you would find is nothing will actually change on screen, okay, but you can see here in the timeline we're actually seeing the waveform for that audio file. So the actual wiggly line that you would see in your text, your audio editor, we can actually see that here in the timeline. Okay, now once again, this is going to kind of disappear off the bottom of the screen. I might see if I can actually move this timeline up here. Oops. I've got my timeline, I've just shifted it from the bottom up to here just so we can see this. When I right click, you can see I get this menu, and what we used to have to do in older versions is come down to the sound section, and we would have to select the sound file just here. So if your audio is not showing up by default in the timeline like this, you might have to right click, come down to sound, and then select your audio. Alright, older versions used to default to off. Okay, don't use the use track sounds. The tracks system is an animation editor. Okay, it's like an animation system that's used to create looping or sequenced movements, but we're not using that. What we need to do is make sure that we've got the sound set to the file that we just loaded. Now if you go into the options, okay, it pops up the attributes for it, and you can load in a different sound file just here if you want. Okay, so if you've found that you loaded the wrong file, you can click on this folder and go in and change it to the other to a different file, assuming that you've got more than one file. Okay, now you can mute it just here, but I would suggest not muting it because you're not going to be able to use it otherwise. Okay, and you can also see how long the audio goes for. In this case, it's 445 frames. I would actually round that up because it's almost 445.5, so I'd probably round that up to 446 frames. So what you could do is actually type in on your timeline 446 just here. Okay, or it's actually just here. So if I typed in this case 446, enter, I would then see the entire audio track in the timeline just here. Okay, now we've also got this, we've got like this offset value here. We'll try changing that. So let's go like 100, and you can see what that does is it shifts the audio and begins it at frame 100. So the offset's actually kind of like the start frame for the audio. All right. Now you'll notice when you do that, it doesn't change the source end and the source start. Okay, what it's doing is it's still setting it to 445 frames. It's just shifting it up the timeline by 100 frames. Okay, now if I change this, let's say we go source start 50, what that's doing is cropping audio off the end, or off the beginning in this case. Okay, so if I set that back to 0, and I set this back to 0, just so we're kind of back to the default. Okay, so if I have a look at frame 50, which is about there. Okay, now you can also get the audio if you click and drag through the timeline, you'll actually hear the audio play back roughly. Okay, and that's so that you can actually scrub back and forth and listen for where the sound begins and see which frame it's on. And we'll be using that in a bit. But just to kind of show you what's going on there, if I increase this to, say, 50, all right, what's happened is the audio starts at frame 0 as usual, but it's actually cropped the beginning of the audio off. So if I start dragging that. Okay, so you can kind of play around with the starting and ending sections, okay, using those numbers. You really probably won't have to, but just so that you're aware that that's what they do. Okay. So let's jump in and start animating this. The first thing I'm going to do is just kind of reset my timeline back down here. It's a little weird having it up the top. So I'm just going to set it back down. Not there. I want it just in there. What I might do is go back to UI and restore UI elements. Nope, not going to do it. The new interface can be a little bit weird with my trying to reposition your timelines and stuff. Okay, so I'm ready to go. I'm just going to turn off the attribute editor. We don't really need that. You may need your channel box from time to time if you're going to be trying to reset numbers and so on for your rigs. Okay, so the other thing that we'll need is the animation, the blend shape panel. So we go to Window, Animation Editors, Blend Shape, just there, and that'll pop our blend shape panel open. Another way that you can set this up, which can be a really good way of working, is if you pop open a 2 viewport panel or a 2 viewport interface like this, you'll find the buttons for them in the sort of the lower left hand end of the interface, sort of just above this My icon, and below these icons there'll be a bunch of preset buttons. If you select one that's got 2 panels side by side, like for example the outliner perspective view, okay, you can actually pop the blend shape panel open as a viewport. So what you can do is go Panels, Panel, Blend Shape, and it'll pop it open as a part of the interface. And this is actually a really good way of working, okay, because it means that all of this is kind of not getting in the way over the top of your viewport. Having the floating window gets a bit annoying sometimes. And you can always just tap your space bar to go into a full viewport mode like this if you're just animating the head moving around, for example. And then when you're doing your actual facial expressions, you can just pop this open and play around with it. Okay, so basically we're ready to start animating. So rather than start right now in this video with just a minute or so left to go, what we'll do is we'll save this file up ready to start working, and then in the next video we'll actually start animating. So what we want to do is save this as a new file. It's set up and ready to go, we just need to save it. So what we'll do is go File, Save Scene As. Okay, now we need to make sure that we go back to our scene folder like this, and what I'm going to do is just call this I'll just call this lip sync underscore anim, short for animation, and then you can just give it a number 001. Okay, so the reason I'm doing that is that if I mess things up or I lose the file or the file corrupts, I've got this file here as a backup which is ready to go, and I can just basically start again. So let's just save that. There we go. So I'm now working off the lip sync animation 1 file. Alright, so we'll leave this video here, and in the next video we'll start the animation process.